Well, hi everybody, it's the Week in the Tackle podcast. I'm Tom Rennie, great to be with you as ever, alongside me virtually, spiritually, and sadly not physically. It is your friend of mine, star of Apple TV, and indeed your dreams. It is Mr. Brian Dunny. Dunset, how are you, mate? You all right? Didn't do Liberati there.
No, I was impressed. I was impressed because that was a good piece of shtick. By the way, I don't know if you can hear my kid. My 5-year-old's playing FIFA in the background. So if you do hear him yelling and screaming, not my fault. This is a bit of a what do we call it? Strep throat going through the household. So no one's in school right now. It's really fun. Specta, some would say. But Rennie, I'm good, man. Nice little weekend in Chicago. Saw my little sister. Had some deep dish pizza, and woke up at 5 a.m. to myself.
Sorry, Tim. Deep dish
pizza.
Yeah,
sorry, Tim.
Everyone slams deep dish pizza, right? Describe it to me.
I mean, it's probably 3 or 4 inches tall. It takes about 45 minutes to cook. We got kind of the Chicago special, Giordano's. Really great restaurant, good atmosphere. But yeah, it had a bunch of different vegetables in it. There was really there was pepperoni inside that one, but it had some peppers and a lot of cheese. Really, I mean, it's big. It's like cheesy. It's like gluttonous. And then the other one was like a barbecue chicken pizza. It deep dish. That one was specta, some would say. So yeah, I had 2 of them. I was with our good friend Jaime Macias, who's always on Sirius XM. He was doing the Spanish commentary for Apple and I almost said MTV, Major League Soccer. And overall a pretty decent game. Soldier Field, really iconic. One of I think that and Wrigley Field, 2 of the oldest sporting event stadiums in the United States. The game itself was pretty lively. 2 teams, Chicago Fire and the New York Red Bulls, needing full 3 points. And really odd, this young kid named John Tolkien, left back for New York, figured out a way unintentionally to get the crowd to literally boo him on every single touch. Even afterwards, we talked to him. I was like, what the hell did you do to get the entire stadium to boo you every single time? He's like, I don't know. I really don't know. And he goes, the worst part, my parents were in the stadium. So it was a really fun experience. Great personality on this kid. And ultimately, the game ends 1-1, late game tying goal for New York. But yeah, man, fun little. Chicago's great. You're out there walking with Jaime Macias. You're 3 miles in. You're going to the Navy Pier, and next thing you know, a giant storm gets you sopping wet. But yeah, man, overall a great weekend. What about you, man?
Well, firstly, I'm looking up Chicago-style pizza while you're talking, and you know your pizza is not something sellable around the world when you have a brand called Chicago Town Pizza, and they don't sell Chicago-style pizza because it's nothing. It's a pie. We've had pies in England since the Middle Ages. Henry VIII used to put his wives in a pie, I'm sure. It's a pie. What you had was a pie. It's a bread pie. It's not a pizza. It's insane they called it a pizza. But I think they just like the wars. I think this is just something that the Chicagoites, Chicagans, I think they just like the war. It's not a pizza, it's a pie, and that's definitive. But yeah, it's all right. I didn't go to Palace. I didn't go to the Palace game at the weekend because I don't want to talk about it too much because there's more interesting things to say, and the stats men keep telling me West Ham are safe. So if they say they're safe, I'll continue to agree with them because it helps me sleep. But I mean, just so utterly incompetent all the way through. Just like it was so incompetent. And then Moyes came out afterward and said, the players are really tired because they've had more games this month than any other club in English football, which is true. And he rotated 2 players, which he put back on at half time. He didn't think he's great at identifying the problem. It's like having a plumber come round, seeing the leak and going, you got a leak there, mate. Well, I'll see you again. See you around. You like, is this a pool? No, it's my basement. You were here to stop the leak. Anyway, very frustrating. I love that story you told there about the guy getting booed in front of his family. I love the idea of him going, no, I was saying boo earns. I hope that's true. Look, I want to get into some of these stories from this weekend because let's start with Liverpool, Dunny. I'm sure you saw it this weekend. This drove me mad, because I'm all back. I love the banter. You know, I'm all for things being top banter, good laugh. You know, I'm all for it. Jurgen Klopp running into the 4th official's face when Liverpool scored their equaliser and then pulling his hamstring. Now, the Twitter sphere, the social media sphere was all like, Jurgen Klopp pulling his hamstring, laughing emoji, crying emoji, isn't that terrific? Peak Barclays, isn't it amazing? And I don't know, I felt like I was watching something completely different. What I saw was a man obnoxiously for no reason at all, running up to another grown man's face. And it was almost like, to me, you know, I was a reasonably like aggressive schoolboy, you know, pathetically. And sometimes you'd have a row with your teacher. And that teacher's entire professional career relies on them not slapping you when you 100% deserve it. Or, you know, you think about a policeman, a good one, who's being kind of screamed at by some drunk outside a pub. Again, their entire career relies on them dealing with that situation with professionalism, with dignity, and, you know, try not to arrest them and all this sort of stuff, right? This, to me, it made me think of my younger days, Dunny, and I know you like to party as well. If I was at a West Ham game in the pub, and it's West Ham Tottenham, and I've been in this scenario, and I go to a lot of grounds as well where I'm not a fan of the clubs involved, and I sit in like neutral areas and things like that. And if someone had run up to me in the way that Jurgen Klopp did, I would have headbutted them. I guarantee you that. If someone had run up to me in that way, in that goading, aggressive, obnoxious way, I would have headbutted them. And I think a lot of people probably would have done the same thing. But the assistant referee doesn't do that. He showed incredible control to allow this buffoon to scream in his face in an attempt to humiliate him because of some invented vendetta that the referees are meant to have against Liverpool, which, by the fucking way, sorry, Tim, on Wednesday night, Thiago handballs the ball in the penalty area. West Ham should get a penalty. They don't get that penalty. And then it's like, oh no, they've got an agenda against us. Well, here's a clue for you, Jack. They don't, because otherwise West Ham would have got that deserved penalty a couple of days previous. So we'll get onto that in a minute, because the concept of accusing referees of being essentially corrupt is frankly despicable, and he should get a 40-game ban for that, if not a ban for life. You can't prove corruption. You should get a proper ban. We'll get to that. But what about this Dunny? Running up to the fourth official and the world thinks it's banter. I didn't get it. I didn't like it. What say you?
I texted you guys immediately. Sorry, I WhatsApped you guys immediately. I mean, that it's just simple intimidation tactics, and it's not the first time, nor will it be the last time. And I giggled because I watched something, I think it was on ESPN FC, where Mark Clattenburg was saying that he should get banned. Here's the problem: Mark Clattenburg wouldn't have sent him off. You want to stop this, and there's a history of, listen, he's a big dude. Jurgen Klopp's a gigantic man, and he makes himself bigger. And he has done this, and we've watched this. And it's not the first time. It's not the first time at Liverpool. It's not the first time in the Premier League. And certainly not the first time in his career. I mean, even the video, grinding his teeth and jutting his mouth out and doing all that stuff. And like, he's an intimidating presence. The reaction, and I get it. I've seen blood red. I've almost cost the United States a spot at the Olympics in 2000. I get how things happen. The red mist, blood red, whatever you want to call it. But there's a consequence to it, unfortunately. And whatever the consequence looks like now, what I will agree with Jurgen Klopp is now the headlines are not about this extraordinary game and the way that it ended. The headline is, and it should be rightfully so, that he can't calm himself down. And in the pressers afterwards, by not directly questioning the integrity of the referee, he's questioning the integrity of the referee. The hamstring is just a part of what the conversation needs to be about. Yeah, it's funny. The dude pops his hamstring, turning and running away, whatever it looks like. That's always going to be funny. But it's certainly not, for me, when we talk about how do we protect these referees. And how many times have we talked about this year alone? How many times have we talked about the way that the body language of these players and these managers towards the referees are despicable? And what the trickle-down effect, we're talking about millions and millions and millions of pounds, right? Dollars, whatever. But at the end of the day, this is also kids, young children, teenagers, young adults, and fully grown adults that are now watching this, and it's being implanted in their brains. And every single week, it feels like we're hearing a story about something that happened in the non-professional levels all over the world, where referees are being assaulted.
Yeah.
And again, he didn't assault him. I'll make that very clear. He didn't assault him, but with the speed in which he ran at the fourth official and made himself bigger, that's an intimidation tactic.
Yeah.
So whatever this looks like going forward, I'm really intrigued to see for PGMOL to come out as quickly as they did. I think was smart on their behalf. Howard Webb is going to have to come out and make a very strong statement to back his referees as well. Because again, whether it's Howard Webb having to either punish, admonish, or deal with all of these missed calls or the perception of missed calls or the explanation of VAR not intervening or intervening to these managers, the same has to go with him protecting his referees.
Yeah.
And when you are implicating that there's some type of question and integrity in this whole conversation with a specific referee towards Liverpool Football Club because of, quote, you cannot deny, but we have a history. There was no apology to the referee. There was an apology for the use of the words and potentially some of the actions, but there was never an apology to the referee. So again, this is just gamesmanship. It's wordsmanship that's happening right now on the backside of not pulling the hamstring is the funny part, but the intimidation of sprinting towards the fourth. First thing, I mean, because listen, I'm like everybody else who doesn't have an invested interest in Liverpool. What the did that guy do to Jurgen Klopp? Sorry, Tim. Like, what could he have possibly said? What could his actions could have been? And this whole thing of like now questioning the value of the fourth official. The fourth official is there to help obviously explain, but also the cooling off process between the immediacy of whatever's happening on the sideline or during the game. And then it's also kind of dealing with the benches and dealing with the substitution patterns. He is just as important as anybody else on that refereeing crew. To suggest he's not, listen, I know the guy in the middle with the referee is the most important, but the fourth official is as important as the other referees in some way, shape, or form, however you try to divest his interest. But yeah, it's just a really, really bad look coming out of a game that I thought was a really fun game to watch.
Listen, on the fourth official bit, I think I made it pretty clear how I feel about it. But people seem to think it was top banter. I think screaming in someone's face, incredible restraint shown by that fourth official. And frankly, his mortgage relies upon it. So, we're talking about who's in power in that situation and who isn't. If he does physically respond to someone, again, if that was in a bar or even in the crowd, you would expect some kind of response, even to push him away from you. Don't go as far as what I said earlier on for a bit of overkill, but just pushing him off of you.
But wait, hold on right there, Tom. I've seen it happen. I was on the field, U.S. under-20s. We played DC United. Jake Dancy was my teammate. We grew up together. He's a year younger than me. Grew up in Diamond Bar. We played on the under-20 World Cup team, went to L.A. to play Bruce Arena's DC United team. And DC United was about to go to Japan, so they were in a layover in LA going to represent MLS in Japan. This is 1997. Brian Kamler, it was got chippy. The tackle happens. There's a lot of trash talking happened. Brian Kamler got tackled by Jake Dancy. He popped up and kind of like went at him face to face. Jake Dancy's reaction, bop, just tapped him, bop, right in the face. Collapsed his cheek, collapsed his nose, and his eye socket broke from one little tap. It sounded like when you thump a watermelon to see if it's ripe. That's the sound it made. He crumbled to a heap. So when you run at somebody and you get your face out and you try to make yourself bigger, I've seen this happen. I've seen it happen on the field. By the way, subsequently, Jake Dancy got sued to the moon and back, and his U.S. national team career was done. He never played for the U.S. team again. So I've seen how this happens. And to your point about the fourth official, and like containing himself in that situation, yeah, credit to him because he didn't react. He kept his arms folded and he just took it, and he shouldn't be taking it. That's the reality.
How have we got into this situation where we're allowing these people to treat these human beings this abominably, publicly, globally? I think it's despicable. And look, that's awful. I think that's awful, and that's something that needs to be addressed urgently. And I'm not against criticism of officials. I think there's a lot to be improved upon, but I hate the fact this all gets sort of taken away with, oh, it's an emotional game. Well, life's an emotional thing. That doesn't mean you can start a fight everywhere you go. Like, my boss annoys me. I can't just run up into their face and say, I'm emotional. Like, I despise the fact that this has sort of become an accepted thing in football. But the other bit, it's equally as bad in a different way. this Paul Tierney thing, right? So there's this little history between Paul Tierney and Jurgen Klopp, which the BBC and the Daily Mail have spoken about today. So in 2020, Tierney reportedly told Klopp to get over it after the referee admitted he missed a foul on Jorginho in a game against Aston Villa, the way it goes. Tierney was also in charge of a Liverpool game at Tottenham in December 2021, where Harry Kane probably should have got sent off for a challenge on Andrew Robertson. I agree with that completely. Seems like a mistake was made there. There's another one in a game against Brentford this year where Klopp squared up to officials to discuss something that happened in a game. And Klopp's quote was about Tierney, and he basically said that he, to paraphrase, he's got an agenda against us. Like, it's always official. I want to try and find the quote in my notes here.
It appears to have something against us. I know he's not doing it. I know he's not doing it intentionally, but we have a history. You cannot deny this.
We have a history. I tried to calm down, but it didn't work out properly. I go into all the interviews and I say what I said. I know he's not doing it intentionally, but we have a history. You cannot deny it. I'm not a resentful person at all. Yeah, right. But these kind of things have happened in the past in decisive games. They didn't happen intentionally, but they are still there, which is basically Klopp responding on the Tuesday, covering his own arse because he knows he was completely out of order at the weekend. Now, look, this, to me, when you're talking about an agenda against us, when you're talking about this official has got a problem with us, what are you alleging here? You are alleging that this referee, Paul Tierney, is consciously, purposefully, because of a vendetta he's got against Liverpool, making calls against your team. That is what Jurgen Klopp is alleging. He can try and back away from it because he was emotional on the Tuesday, and we can accept that if we want to. In the same game, he squares up to the fourth official in a manner that if he did it down the Dog and Ducky in Romford this weekend, he would be picking up his teeth off the sidewalk from. So let's not accept that as nothing. But then he says this, he's alleging corruption. That is what this is. It is alleging corruption on Paul Tierney, saying it's been done multiple times and I can prove it on this occasion. What is the problem he's got against them? He's saying that he is consciously, purposefully stopping Liverpool getting decisions. That, to me, is the kind of accusation you cannot make without some sort of evidence. You can 100% say mistakes, wrong decisions, incompetence. I'll talk about incompetence of officials all day long with you. I'll back you up when I think it's the right thing to do. I'll argue against you when I think it's the right thing to do. But competence is one thing. Being a good referee is one thing. Alleging corruption, and that is what this is. Make no mistake about it. He is alleging corruption here. Now, there was an incident in the Europa League semi-final last year when Declan Rice, the West Ham player in the game against Eintracht Frankfurt, said something to the effect of, the decisions are going all their way. It's so bad, it's corruption. And he got a game or two banned for it.
Heading into the tunnel, yeah.
In the tunnel. Now, again, I think saying anything is corrupt in this way is so far beyond the pale. To me, Declan Rice should not have been allowed to play in European competition this season. If you are alleging corruption, that is so far beyond the pale for me. And the reason I use that example is because people will be listening to this show going, oh, he's a West Ham fan or whatever. No, absolutely not. I think we're better than that on this program. That's not the conversation that we're having. This, to me, I think there should not just be some kind of, oh, I was all emotional and I've calmed down a bit. I'm expecting a real full-on mea culpa here from Jurgen Klopp. I'm expecting, I allege corruption. I was totally, completely, unequivocally out of order. I have no evidence of corruption. I have no evidence of an agenda. I have no evidence of a vendetta. And what I meant to say was, I question the competence of this referee. That is not what he said here. He is alleging corruption. And I think they've got to come down really, really, really hard on this. Because if you allege something like that, you better come with the goddamn receipts. And if you don't, you better sit down and take a lot of punishment.
Here's the reality, though. This happens quite a bit. It happens. Let's go back to the World Cup. Lionel Messi, post Argentina, Netherlands. Lahoud's the referee. I mean, he slaughtered the man. Now, Lahoud's is a big personality when you talk about referees, right? His body language, his presence, his communication. The very first game that I went to see New Year's Eve or New Year's afternoon at Camp Nou was Barcelona Espanyol. And the moment that Lahuz stepped onto the field, which was his first appearance since Lionel Messi basically said he's not good enough to be a referee for a game at this level, he got booed. That entire stadium booed him. I think he gave out like 14 yellow cards, 3 red cards. One was overturned by VAR, and he actually hugged Xavi on the sideline. That was like the presence of Lahuz, right? So whether it's player or it's manager, there's a history of publicly going after the referees. And what is it? It's a slap on the wrist. A slap. The financial side of this is a complete waste. It's not worth it. It's not worth it. This is all monopoly money. Oh, 40 grand. 40 grand to Jurgen Klopp? 40 grand is like, what's the equivalent? 75 cents for us? Like, it's nothing. So if you want to ban, but then the stupidity of like, when you get a ban, is it a touchline ban? But then you can have it appealed, and is it overturned? And is it knocked down to 1 game instead of 3 games? Whatever it is, whatever the decision is, it has to be incredibly strong, visually and physically. Visually, it has to pass the eyeball test that there is a punishment if this is going to be a real punishment. But also, you have to make sure that he is banned if this is the path that they're going to go down. But I'll tell you this, I can understand the psychology of this completely. For me, I can understand how he gets wound up to the point where verbally he's saying what he's saying. The physical side, I can see how that happens too, but these are 2 separate incidents for me. I can't tell you how many times that you, as a player, and I'll just speak from a player, not from a manager, because I've never been a manager, that you feel like this guy's got something against you. Every single game, every single season, every single time that you find out, first thing as a player, not the first thing, but one of the things when a player prepares for a game, they'll be like, who's the ref today? Or who's the ref this weekend? And they'll look it up. Like, oh, it's this guy. Sorry, Tim. And what's going to happen in their mind, they're creating this battle that's already happening based on previous events. And so you feel like, as a player, if a massive call is gone against you or gone against your team, and it's that guy, sorry, Tim, all of a sudden in your mind, you're creating this perception of a battle that he's against us. And this could happen 10 years previous, and it'll still, every single time, you'll be thinking about that one incident that happened and that he's got it in for you. And listen, I'm friends with a former referee out here. He was, we became friends a long time ago, friendly as when I was player. And then after I got in the media, we became closer. And there was one time he told me this story, because there was this one, I won't name names, but there was this one predominant player in Major League Soccer that had a great personality, but he was very combative and he always had something to say. He was always bitching and moaning about something. I can say bitching and moaning, right? Yeah, I can say bitching and moaning. It's still thumbs up. And the referee just got so tired of taking it. So he told me a story about one time he knew he was going to get it. And so he gets in the tunnel, he's in the middle, and he looks over and he goes, "Hey," to the guy. He says his name. And the kid looks at him, he goes, "Yeah." He goes, "F you." Sorry, Tim. And then turns around and just looks at the field and just starts the procession on the field. It was like a preemptive strike because he knew he was going to get absolutely murdered for 90 minutes. And so that was there. So these are all human beings. Like, at the end of the day, yeah, mistakes are made. Are the consequences of the mistakes bigger than what we think about for just us normal schmucks or us normal Joes or us knuckleheads? Yeah, they're bigger because of the stage that they're on and this competitive nature and atmosphere, and it's psychological as well as physical. I can see how it gets to this point that you think this guy has something against you. I totally understand it, but it's still a line that cannot be crossed. And as funny as it is to watch an old ass man pop his hamstring and then have to walk around the field and clap the fans and go hug and shake hands and do all that, and you can tell he's in serious pain, that's funny. That's funny. But what's not funny is the way that he ran at the fourth official. Yeah, that's a line that shouldn't have been crossed.
Absolutely agreed. Elsewhere on this story, it's worth noting that Jurgen Klopp, in his post-match rantings and conspiracy theorizing, said that Tierney said something to him post-match, the referee, that was, quote, not okay. The PGMOL, the body responsible for Premier League referees, came out afterward and said Tierney was professional all the way through. And also, by the way, we got it recorded. So if you want, we can just release the recordings of what was said to clear things up. And then on Tuesday, would you believe it, Jurgen Klopp comes out with a kind of groveling, oh, no, nothing should have happened thing. There's a great story, which I'm pretty sure was, it's about Tony Adams and George Graham from the early 90s. It's on YouTube, this video, where they did an experiment in miking up the referees. And it was David Ellery, the referee, I think. And Tony Adams, I think it is, comes into the dressing room with George Graham, and George Graham is saying to him, did you do this? Did you say that to the referee? Tell me now. Tell me the truth. Is this what happened? And Adams goes, no. No way that happened. It's not possible. And George Graham says to him, you know he's mic'd up, right? So I've got the recordings of this, so I'll check it. And Adams says, well, yeah, I did say it. Sure, I said it. Yeah, of course I did. Because it's a very different world. When you know there's evidence and receipts on you, they're not. So let's get this audio and let's clear this up completely and find out exactly how referees get talked to by managers and see what happens next on this. And a couple of further points, then I want to move on. Alfred Mark Housey, former Premier League referee, comes on our Sirius XM FC kindly shows every now and then. And he basically says that I used to allow Premier League players, footballers, to say, and this is to your point from earlier, they could say to me anything they wanted, really. It's not like the other sports where there's got to be a sense of decorum. They can say anything they want as long as they don't make it public, don't be demonstrative, cover your mouth, talk to me in my office or whatever, my dressing room at halftime, which I always find bizarre. It seems to be accepted in this world when it frankly shouldn't be. But I want to bring up Ref Support UK, who are a charity that work in the UK. And I mentioned this, I know you know this, but to our listeners, my dad's been a referee for years and years and years of normally under 16s and 17s, but also younger children. My brother-in-law does my nephew's games. He's like 10, 11, 12. I kind of stopped playing football at an amateur level because there's too many punch-ups and you can't get a referee anyway. You know, it's just not worth it. I come for a kickabout and I just kind of don't want to get punched in the face again. You know, there does come a stage in your life where you think, is this worth it? And it's not, I don't want to come to the office with a black eye, you know, I just wanted to go for a kickabout, so it's not worth it. So there's a big issue here and a wider issue, which is why you mentioned role models earlier, because they absolutely are. Ref Support UK says, quote, we welcome the BGMOL statement on the behaviour of Jurgen Klopp during the Liverpool-Tottenham game and their swift public support. The behaviour of some managers on the touchline is disgraceful and has for decades been this way, yet the LMA, the League Manager Association, appear to say and do nothing to address the problem. They never publicly condemn such behaviour. Is it therefore fair to ask, why do the LMA exist? I thought it was a terrific point. If the Manager Association isn't going to come out to condemn this behaviour because they're cool with it, then we're not going to get any kind of resolution, right? Because there's no punishment, there's no reason to not do it again, and the managers evidently think they can just say, oh well, yeah, I abused him and I basically offered out some guy and I called this guy corrupt, but hey ho, there you go, I was emotional. What are you talking about? Would you accept, like, oh, one of your kids did this to their head teacher at school, but they were emotional, so it's fine, you can call someone corrupt and square up to them, that's fine because you were emotional? It's incredible, this. I think it's a fair point. Where are the associations? Where are the LMA here?
It's a great question. It's a great point. And there's I just feel like there's a responsibility for all of us, right? To take moments like this and be honest. Just be honest about the situation. Be realistic about the situation. And recognize if this was at any of the, like, if this is a Sunday league or a Saturday league, right? If this is an adults league, if this is watching our children, would this be acceptable? I mean, not holier than thou, not trying to be holier than thou, but this is, if I watched my 13-year-old son's coach run at a referee like that, in that manner, I wouldn't want him playing for him. So it just shows you kind of the size and the scope of this situation. Now, what'll happen? I don't know. I don't know what the right answer is for something like this. I think we can pontificate about the amount of games and the amount of money financially and what it should look like. But the reality is, listen, at the end of the day, we got to figure out a way to minimize this. And we got to figure out a way to start really pointing out when things like this happen that it shouldn't be acceptable. That's it. It's plain and simple. It's very black or white. It's a linear situation. Can't cross this line. That's it. And the line was crossed. I don't care what anyone says. The way that he ran it, that nature, again, I texted you guys. I was like, what the did that guy do? Sorry, Tim. Like, what did he do? What could he have possibly done to invoke that type of reaction? Because that's not That's not scoring a goal. That's not conceding a goal. That's not giving up a penalty. That's not earning a penalty. That was a deep-rooted reaction right there running at that fourth. And that's what I didn't understand.
Unacceptable. And let's hope there's a big punishment. There should well be. Speaking of big punishments, if you had a season ticket at Leeds United at the start of the season, you'd have been hoping to see some Bielsa-like Jesse Marsh football, goals galore, end-to-end drama. You're going to end the season with Big Sam Allardyce as your manager. It's not confirmed as yet as we are recording the program, but all the right people, our friends at TalkSport, Fabrizio Romano, all confirming that Allardyce is all but in the door at Leeds. Victor Orta has gone, director of football at Leeds United States of America. He's left by mutual consent because I think it was probably his idea to hire Jesse Marsh and Javi Gracia, which ain't gone so great. 17th in the Premier League right now. Only goal difference keeps them out of the relegation zone, and Nottingham Forest below them have a superb fixture against Southampton at home this weekend. So Everton likely, Leeds even, forgive me, likely to be in the relegation zone by the weekend. Javi Gracia given the job on the 17th of February. Michael Scubalalala was manager for a couple of weeks, and Jesse Marsh was hired just after a January transfer window where they literally signed players he requested. Dunny, I mean, I don't know. There's loads of ways to go on this, but I wanted to bring you this first. I thought you'd like this. Podcasts are great. We can all agree podcasts are great. You got to have a podcast. We've got a podcast, Week in the Tackle. You're listening to it right now. If you're watching on YouTube, subscribe. If you're listening to it as a subscriber, you can watch this on YouTube, which is kind of this, but I'm in my hands a lot. Well, also, someone who's got a podcast is Sam Allardyce. He's working with a gambling company and the presenter Natalie Pike on a podcast called No Tippy Tappy Football. Which is just terrific. I didn't know about this till this morning, but I knew Big Sam was coming back, and so I listened to the first episode. The first episode, he says he turned down the Leicester job, didn't want it. Dean Smith is now, of course, Leicester City manager. He then says that Leeds United, the way they played this weekend, was utterly embarrassing. He didn't go so far as to say Javi Gracia should get the sack. The managers' union don't tend to do that sort of thing. But he was about as damning as you can possibly get. And 6 minutes into the podcast, he said the old Allardyce trope, if my name was Allardicio or Allardicia, I'd have been right at the top of the game. Essentially, there's an agenda against him because he's not an Italian manager who maybe could have got to the top of the game with that sumptuous and scintillating football. Bonnie, talk to me about this. Your reaction to this. What on earth is happening at Major League Soccer to think that Sam Allardyce can win them enough points to keep them up? And just quick sidebar, he starts on Saturday with, checks notes, Manchester City.
Yeah, this is a panic button being pushed at the highest order. I think they pushed the panic button with Jesse Marsh too early, and they made the switch. Victor Orta and the shenanigans in the stands, well documented with how emotional he was, how much the levity was needed in that position versus the passion in that position is always up for debate. But the amount of money spent on this roster would suggest at this stage they didn't feel like they were going to be anywhere near a situation like this. Now, from ownership perspective and the San Francisco 49ers and what their piece looks like, I'd be really intrigued to find out exactly the stipulations of the involvement of the potential full takeover and how much money is on the table, or potentially how much money is off the table should they be relegated back to the championship. This is playing your last ace in the back pocket. This is the last one you get to play. And Leeds United are playing it right now by giving control of this group to Big Sam Allardyce and to dumb it down to its simplest form, where it is about competing and it is playing direct and it's keeping the ball as far away from your goal as possible. That's what this is going to be. The remaining games is going to be make yourself as difficult to play against as possible, minimize the mistakes, and create an atmosphere when Big Sam walks through the door with his coaching staff, his preferred group, to let's simplify the game to its dumbest form and just try to survive. That's it. So am I surprised? 100% I'm surprised. I'm shocked that they are making this decision, but this is just screams we have to stay in the Premier League more than anything.
A few weeks ago, when Dean Smith got the job at Leicester City, I haven't got the stat in front of me, but it basically said that no one had been appointed that late in a Premier League season and stayed in the Premier League. Everyone appointed from that date onwards had got their team relegated. No one has ever come in 4 games remaining and kept a team in the Premier League. The first game is Manchester City for Leeds, and it's Newcastle at home, West Ham away, and then Tottenham at home. And that's a game I can tell you for a fact, West Ham are basically wrapping their whole season around trying to beat Leeds United at home. So it's not going to be easy for Leeds there. Talk to me about desperation. You mentioned there just trying to stay in the Premier League at all costs, because this, to me, when you sack your manager, you're almost saying, look, we made a mistake. This doesn't work. That doesn't work. I can't get rid of the players, so I'll get rid of the manager, try and get a new bounce. No one saw the Roy Hodgson bounce coming, but that's proved to be an inspired decision for the short term, not for the long term. That's what this is. But desperation forces you to do some funny old things. Victor Orta going says a lot. Allardyce coming in says a lot. Why are they so desperate? And the reason I say that is that they hired a new manager in Javi Gracia. And look, they've had some awful results recently, but he is already your fireman coming in, put out the fires, try and get results.
Yeah.
How could he have gone from this is the right man doing the job, a couple of bad results, the next man comes in? Like, how does an industry get to... How is it in a constant state of panic? Like it just seems to me utterly incompetent to get to this position. And yet it's not just Leeds. I'm not just digging out Leeds here. Almost everyone's done it, top and bottom, Tottenham included. They were the 5th best team in the country on Friday.
Yeah, well, and what does it say that Nottingham Forest is stuck with Steve Cooper, who's in a very, very similar situation, except they seem like they're much more competitive, way more competitive than Leeds United. By the way, and not for nothing, side example, Tyler Adams has been such a huge loss since he's gone down with that hamstring injury. Just an engine in the midfield that neither Roca nor McKennie can replicate. This to me is not just about losses. It's about the manner in which they're losing. The 4-1 loss to Arsenal is understandable, right? But when you lose 5-1 to Palace at home, when you lose 6-1 to Liverpool at home, when you lose 4-1 at Bournemouth, and all due respect to Bournemouth, it tells you that the psyche of the group is crumbling or has already crumbled. That's you can lose. This whole thing of competition, you can lose. It's not as if these players step onto the field and think that, that they're not, well, take that back, because as I was about to make that point, I can see the psychology of a player being broken and crumbled, already thinking they're going to lose before they even enter the tunnel to head out on the field, much less make the mistake that leads to the goal, which just makes them more and more difficult to deal with. But I say this all the time. If you're not scoring goals, Tom, if you cannot score goals and you feel like at any point the opposition is going to attack and simply score, you just start dropping deeper. And as you drop deeper, you start panicking just a little bit more because you feel like you're under it. And as you're panicking and dropping deeper, next thing you know, when you win the ball, you're not really sure what to do with it because everyone's so deep and you don't have that immediate play out of the back. Then what happens a little bit more first, when that first, dam, part of the dam starts to break defensively, you just crumble because you already know who the weakest player is. And you might be the weakest player and you're letting them down. And then you feel like the fan pressure and you feel like all of that. So right now, this is a broken, from a psychological standpoint, a broken team that needs a reset for the second time. For the second time in 4 months? So Big Sam, I'm really intrigued to see how this works because he obviously fancies himself. He always has. He's got a big ego. He's got I wouldn't say arrogance, but it is arrogance. He's got a big self-belief in what he does. He is a firefighter. He's been there. He's done that. This is the last shot at keeping this team up. And so how does he figure out a way to create an environment that becomes a feel-good environment that releases the tension and pressure within the group, but at the same time makes them acutely aware of, checks notes at Man City, Newcastle at home, at West Ham, ending with Tottenham Hotspur.
Not great.
Yikes.
It's not a great list of fixtures. Let me ask you a little bit about that, because the 4 games thing, that's what I find most astonishing here. Like when you get to this point, usually, you dance with the one that brung you. Like it's too late to change anything here. How long will it take? The reason I ask you that specifically in this game, in this team, is because this team was mainly assembled by Marcelo Bielsa. Then it was assembled by Jesse Marsh to be a bit like Bielsa. I'm being very broad brushstrokes here, right? But, we're an attacking team. We're a positive team. We're not Bielsa, but, we take elements of that and we do it a little bit more, a bit cleaner. We defend better. That's broadly what they tried to do. That didn't work out for whatever reason. They didn't bring in Javi Gracia, who has done a good job in the Premier League previously. Solid, unspectacular manager, but knows what he's doing. And then that falls apart. You then get to Sam Allardyce by way of Michael Scubalalala as well. He was in charge for a couple of games, inexplicably. Now, there's no way that someone whose career profile fits Bielsa fits Allardyce. There's no scenario. This is like, I keep referencing this at the moment, like the episode of Friends where Rachel tries to make a trifle and she makes it with minced meat because the 2 pages got stuck together. Like no one that Sam Allardyce wants, and he was West Ham's manager for 4 years. They wouldn't even get a look in at Bielsa. There is no like great tactical dexterity. There is no like 4-dimensional thinking. It's straight lines. It's do your job. It's kick 'em. It's punch 'em. It's get a corner. It's basically what Sean Dyche does. Now, I don't disparage that like some people do. Allardyce has got this big issue, this big chip on his shoulder. It's weird to see a chip on his shoulder that he's not eaten. But it's very strange that he keeps going like, oh, I'm not a long ball manager. If I were called Allardyce, I'd have been at the very top of the game. Spot on impression. That or Bernard Manning, I can't be sure. But he is a long ball manager. He is a straight lines manager. And that has been very effective at times, certainly against your tippy-tappy football teams. But how is he going to turn Bielsa Marsh players into Allardyce players across these 4 games? Surely, Dunny, I mean, you've played with great players and crap players. Don't name which one's which, and don't tell us which one you were in that spectre. But how are you going to get someone to do that against Man City, Newcastle, West Ham, and Tottenham? I mean, if you're Willie Nonto, you're going to be utterly baffled by this, aren't you?
Well, good news. He likes Willie Nonto. He said in his Tippy Tappy podcast he couldn't figure out why he wasn't playing more than what he was, with Javi Gracia putting him more on the bench, even though he did start at the weekend. I'm really intrigued to see if he goes with 3 in the back, if he goes with 4 in the back, how he changes the structure of the team. Again, making yourself difficult to play against doesn't mean you're asking Luke Ayling to play as a winger all the way up at midfield when you're in possession. It also doesn't ask Jack Harrison to play on the opposite side, 2 very different players in the same position on opposite sides of the field as an outside left wing back. Bamford scores at the weekend, but Bamford's been woeful in his finishing. Somerville and Nonto are really exciting, dynamic players, but then how do you build, I guess, the right structure? And Meslier in the back is a goalkeeper, has not been the goalkeeper that we had previously seen. Right now, he is on a psychological wobble because he was a fantastic up-and-coming young goalkeeper that right now is at the mercy of a team that is conceding a ton of goals. So Christensen, Koch, Cooper in the back. Is it 3? Is it 4? Is it flat? Is it dynamic? I think he just simplifies it. But here's the other part of this. Everyone from the outside can tell you what's wrong. But it's not until you're inside that locker room and you're watching the dynamics of the players as they warm up and they're on the field and you're looking at trying to find out psychologically where they're at. This is less about talent and this is more about the psychological right now. And he'll have this week to figure out exactly what he's looking at. And then he'll try to create a system that's going to work. He'll have an idea, but that idea will only last as long as he is unaware of exactly what he has available to him heading into these last 4 games.
It is incredible the dinosaurs are all coming back. I really thought this era was over, and yet now we've got Roy Hodgson back, Allardyce back, Moyes is still around. I actually thought this period was over, but maybe there's so many sackings now, there's only so many people that would take these jobs. And in that spirit, it's time to bring Tim Horsey into the programme, as well as Mr. Brian Dunseth, as we do something I know Dunny loves to do, and that's take a quiz. And today's quiz is how many clubs that Sam Allardyce has managed can you name? So we're going to go Dunny to Tim, Tim to Dunny. We'll start with Dunny. Dunny, name 1 club that Sam Allardyce has managed.
Well, because I played against them with the U.S. Under-23s, I'm going to say Bolton Wanderers.
Most famously, Bolton Wanderers manager from 1999 to 2007. Yes, Tim, name one for me.
I'm going to go with West Ham.
West Ham United, 2011 to 2015, including the playoff final 2012, won at Wembley Stadium. Ricardo Vazte's goal, getting the hammers up. Dunny, back to you.
I will go with Andy in New Hampshire's favorite team, West Brom.
West Bromwich Albion, 2020 to 2021. The first time Big Sam Allardyce was brought into a club to keep them from relegation, but he could not do the job. A memorable win at Chelsea in that run, but they went down under Big Sam Allardyce, did West Brom. Tim, back to you.
I'm going to go with Everton.
Yes, Everton, of course, which means I think he should be Real Madrid manager by now. Very strange. Everton manager, 17 to 18. Not fondly remembered, I think, at Goodison Park. Dunny.
I'm going to go with the clothes rack shoulders of Ryan Nelson and Blackburn Rovers.
Yeah, Blackburn Rovers, 2008 to 2010, before he was ousted by his friend Steve Keane, who looked like an off-duty policeman, as I recall. Was he in charge doing that Indian food advert that Ryan Nelson did? Incredible.
He was.
They had tikka masala in the dressing room. The Venky's group. Yeah. Oh, it's incredible. You've got to search for it. Tim, you're up.
Crystal Palace.
Oh, yes. Crystal Palace, 2016 to 2017. Did he replace Warnock or Pulis or someone diabolical? Anyway, yes, that's right. Danny, back to you.
Was he at? No, he was Stadium of Light, right? He was at Sunderland.
Famously at Sunderland, when he kept them up, he was the right manager, the right club, the right time. And famously on the pitch at the Stadium of Light was in his suit, took his kind of jacket off and was displaying the goods for all to see in his sweaty white shirt like a dad at every wedding. Yes, that's true. Tim, what you got?
Oof. This is going to be a complete guess. Fulham?
Oh, no Fulham. Come on. Sam Allardyce at Fulham. If his name was Allardyce, he might have got the job. But because he's not, there's no way he'd get job down King's Road. That means you've lost. Danny, you've won. Do you want to name any other clubs that he managed?
Well, I don't know if we get extra points for this, but do we get to say that he was manager of England before the old...
Come on.
I'm just asking for extra points. I mean, he got the job. That was like the tipping point of his career. That's the highest moment he could have possibly ever had.
Yeah, and then he had a lovely pint of wine and it all came crashing down for him. The only England manager to have a 100% record. A 1-0 victory against, who was it? Lallana scored. I forget who it was against. Nobody cares. The other
Mexico. Mexico's B team.
8 friendlies a year. You could have had Limerick, Preston North End, Blackpool, Notts County. You got the rest, guys. Well done. Good effort. Good effort there. Is he going to keep him up? Will he keep him up, Big Sam, do you think?
Oh, man. Does it keep him up? I think here's the problem. When you're looking at momentum right now, and I just had this up. Dean Smith, a win and 2 draws in the last 3 matches. Who else are we talking? Everton, even though they're not looking great, at least they look like they're up for it. Southampton's gone. Nottingham Forest, they're still kind of figuring out ways to score goals, even though they're figuring out ways not to score penalties and giving up late equalizers. I don't know, man. It's between Leicester City, Leeds, Nottingham Forest, and Everton, right? So 2 spots for 4 teams. There's nothing. I'll tell you what, at least Leeds is scoring a goal a game. They might be conceding 4 to 5, but at least they're scoring. If they can defensively figure out a way to be as sound as possible, they've got a chance. I know I'm trying to walk my way through this, but these last 4 games. Sorry, Tim.
Should I give the game? So Leicester have got Fulham away, Liverpool home, Newcastle away, West Ham at home.
Similar schedule.
Leeds have got Man City away, Newcastle home, West Ham away, Tottenham home. Nottingham Forest, Southampton at home, Chelsea away, Arsenal at home, Palace away. Everton have Brighton away, Man City at home, Wolves away, Bournemouth at home, Southampton. I'll give you it anyway. They're going to go in a couple of weeks. Forest away, Fulham at home, Brighton away, Liverpool at home. There's just too much, I think, for Southampton to make up. West Ham not being put in this list by the bookies, really. Opta think West Ham have only got a 1% chance of going down. I spoke to West Ham legend Joe Cole, who said, "Shut up, mate. They're going to stay up. You're talking about." No, that was what he would have said if he was a market trader in 1972. Basically that. But I'll give you West Ham's anyway, which is Man City on Wednesday, Man United at the weekend, Brentford away, Leicester at home, Leeds away. I think 34 is not enough. So until you got 36, I think you should be in the conversation. So, Dunny, those are the fixtures. If Southampton are gone, I think they are. Who would you put in there today?
I would say that Everton has the best schedule of those four teams. They've got the better schedule remaining for winnable games than Leeds, Forest, Leicester. So I'm going to say that I think it's going to end the way it looks right now. I think it's going to, no, actually, you know what? I'm going to say Forest and Leeds go down. I think Everton stays up.
Yeah, Everton. I mean, I can't conceive of a world where Everton go down. I just don't
especially with that new stadium coming right around the corner.
No, I actually think I was chatting to Trevor Stephen a couple of days ago, Everton legend, and he was telling me about the kind of the Armageddon of the whole thing from a fan perspective. And I was saying to him, well, that might be true. And the finances, look, I don't know about the finances and where it is, but can you imagine the final season of Goodison isn't a bleeding awful relegation battle for a whole year, and it's depression and misery and losing and losing and losing. It's an actual reset at the club. You get relegated this year. You forget this conversation about constantly, maybe, possibly being relegated, which I can tell you as a fan is so fucking draining. Sorry, Tim. And what you get is the biggest budget in the Championship, 2 sales which cover your losses in Onana and Calvert-Lewin, and then you win the Championship at Goodison Park, final season there, promotion over to whatever it's called, Stanley Park, and you actually have something to celebrate. I actually think it could be the best thing that's happened to Everton to get relegated, as opposed to having another season next year at Goodison Park where it's all bed sheets and protests and Mashiri out and all that sort of nonsense. So it might do them a favour. But they ain't going to go down, so it doesn't matter. For me, Southampton, I think Leeds are going to go. I just don't see Allardyce being able to turn around their fortunes at the pace required. When you get to West Ham, they'll be on 30 points with 2 to go. Hopefully, West Ham will have 2 points by then, which, for them, which means they can play West Ham kind of on the beach, thinking about, hopefully for them, the Conference League. If not, West Ham need a win. I wouldn't fancy that game if I were Leeds United. And then you go Tottenham away, final day, don't see it. The other one, it ain't going to be Everton. I actually think Forest have got the best of the fixtures, which kind of means Leicester, right? Fulham, Liverpool, Newcastle, West Ham, 4 points, 5 maybe, 2 wins possibly, but I don't know. Do you know what? As long as it's West Ham, I couldn't give a sorry, Tim. Thank you, Dunny. That was Brian Dunseth. I'm Tom Rennie. Tim Horsey produced the programme. We're back with you next week. It's Week in the Tackle, the podcast. What a show.